A Werewolf Shifter Romance, written by Amelia Hart. Chapter 1. Hidden Shadows. The rain hammered against the windshield with relentless fury, each droplet exploding like tiny glass fragments in the pale glow of Claire Morgan's headlights. The narrow mountain road twisted through Pine Valley's darkest corners, where ancient pines pressed close like silent sentinels guarding secrets she'd never imagined existed. Claire's knuckles were white against the steering wheel, her 24-year-old frame tense with exhaustion after 18 grueling hours at Pine Valley Veterinary Hospital. The emergency call about a badly injured German shepherd had kept her working through the night, and now the storm seemed determined to keep her from reaching the sanctuary of her small apartment above the flower shop on Main Street. She'd always felt different in this town, though she couldn't explain why. Maybe it was because she was adopted, found as an infant by the Morgans, after what police reports called a tragic animal attack that left an entire family dead in the mountains. The social worker had whispered about wild wolves, about how miraculous it was that baby Claire survived unharmed in the wreckage of that remote cabin. Margaret Morgan had found her first, wrapped in blood-stained blankets, beside bodies too mangled for identification. The authorities assumed the infant had been visiting when the attack occurred. No missing persons reports matched. No relatives came forward. Claire Morgan became her legal name because no one knew what else to call her. The Morgans had been kind enough, raising her with gentle hands and patient hearts in their Victorian house on Elm Street. Robert had taught her to change car tires and balance checkbooks with methodical precision. Margaret had shown her how to braid hair and make apple pie from their backyard tree, but they died in a car accident when she was 16, leaving her truly alone in a world that always felt like she was viewing it through frosted glass. Other people seemed to navigate relationships and social connections with an ease that escaped her entirely. In high school, she'd tried joining clubs, attending parties, dating the quarterback who asked her to homecoming. Nothing stuck. She felt like she was acting in a play where everyone else knew the script except her. Animals, though animals understood her. They trusted her instinctively, even the most aggressive rescue cases calming beneath her touch. Rabid raccoons would let her examine them without sedation. Feral cats purred when she approached their carriers. Dr. Harrison joked that she had a supernatural gift with difficult cases. It was why veterinary school had felt like coming home, why she'd returned to Pine Valley despite having offers in larger cities with better pay and more opportunities. Something about these mountains called to her, whispered promises she couldn't quite grasp. Her small apartment might be lonely, her social life non-existent, but Pine Valley held her like a gentle hand around her heart. The dreams had been getting worse lately, more vivid and consuming. Always the same impossible scenes: wolves running through moonlit forests, their howls echoing through her sleeping mind with a loneliness that made her wake with tears on her cheeks. Sometimes she dreamed of golden eyes watching her from shadows, of a presence both terrifying and comforting. Other times, she was the one running, her body moving with fluid grace through underbrush that should have torn her skin. Dr. Harrison, her mentor at the veterinary hospital, had suggested she might be experiencing delayed trauma responses from her early childhood. The mind processes things in its own time, he'd said kindly over coffee in his cluttered office. Perhaps your subconscious is finally ready to confront what happened to your birth family. But Claire knew it was more than trauma. The dreams felt like memories, like glimpses of a life she'd never lived, but somehow knew intimately. When she worked with injured wolves at the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center 30 miles north, their eyes held recognition that made her skin prickle with awareness. They watched her differently than they watched other humans, with expectation rather than wariness. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the forest in stark black and white. Claire eased off the accelerator, peering through the storm's chaos at the winding asphalt ahead. The radio crackled with static, weather warnings barely audible through the interference. Flash flood warnings remain in effect for Cascade County. The voice struggled through the white noise. Residents are advised to avoid unnecessary travel on mountain roads until... The transmission died in a burst of static. Claire reached forward to fiddle with the tuner, searching for clearer reception. Pine Valley's location in a mountain valley made radio signals unpredictable even in good weather. During storms, communication with the outside world often disappeared entirely. She'd driven this route countless times, knew every curve and pothole from memory. The stretch between the hospital and town center was only 12 miles, but it wound through the deepest part of the national forest, where cell towers couldn't penetrate the dense canopy. Tonight felt different, though. Tonight, the darkness seemed alive, pressing against the windows like something hungry. Another flash of lightning, and Claire's breath caught in her throat. There something massive stood in the middle of the road, blocking her path completely. Her foot slammed the brake pedal instinctively, tires screaming against wet asphalt as the car skidded sideways. She fought for control, hands spinning the wheel desperately as the world tilted into chaos. Time slowed to crystalline clarity. The creature in her headlights was enormous, far too large to be any natural wolf she'd studied in veterinary school. Silver-black fur gleamed like liquid metal in the harsh illumination, and eyes the color of molten gold fixed on hers through the windshield, with an intelligence that stopped her heart. It didn't move, didn't flee or cower as any normal animal would, when faced with 2 tons of metal bearing down on it. Instead, it stood with regal stillness, watching her car slide toward inevitable collision with an expression that seemed almost resigned, almost human. No, no, no! Claire yanked the wheel hard left, but physics had already claimed victory. The impact came with a sickening thud that reverberated through the car's frame and into her bones. Claire's airbag deployed, slamming into her chest and stealing her breath as the world exploded in chemical powder and the acrid smell of deployed safety systems. Her seatbelt cut into her shoulder, holding her against forces that wanted to throw her through the windshield. The world went white, then black, then settled into a ringing silence, broken only by the steady patter of rain against crumpled metal and the hiss of steam rising from her destroyed engine. When her vision cleared, Claire fumbled for the door handle with shaking fingers. The driver's side was partially crushed against a massive pine tree, but she managed to squeeze through the gap and stagger into the storm. Rain immediately soaked through her scrubs and cardigan, the mountain cold cutting through fabric like it was tissue paper. Her flashlight beam swept the road frantically, searching for any sign of the creature she'd struck. Blood should be everywhere. Fur, tissue, some evidence of the violent collision she'd witnessed and felt. But the asphalt showed only scattered safety glass, and the dark stain of motor oil spreading in the rain. "Where are you?" she whispered, her voice lost in the wind. The beam of light caught something pale against the dark road surface 20 feet ahead. Not fur, but skin. Human skin. Claire ran forward, her medical training overriding confusion and fear. A man lay sprawled on his side, naked and motionless, his back turned toward her, dark hair plastered against his skull, rain running in rivulets down broad shoulders and muscled arms that belonged on a professional athlete. He was enormous, easily 6 feet tall with the powerful build of someone accustomed to physical demands far beyond any office job. She dropped to her knees beside him, fingers automatically seeking a pulse at his throat while her mind raced through medical protocols. Strong and steady heartbeat, though his skin burned with fever that felt dangerous even through the rain. Her flashlight revealed a face that belonged in classical sculptures, rather than lying unconscious on a mountain road, all sharp angles and masculine beauty, marred only by a thin scar cutting through his left eyebrow like an old battle wound. "Sir, can you hear me?" Claire shook his shoulder gently, the way she'd been taught to rouse unconscious patients. "I'm going to help you. I'm a veterinarian. I have medical training." No response. But his breathing remained steady and deep, as she studied his form with professional detachment, looking for injuries that needed immediate attention. Confusion bloomed in her chest like a flower of ice. There were no wounds, no blood, no sign of trauma despite the violent collision she was certain had occurred. His body was perfect, unmarked, almost too perfect to be entirely human. Where had the wolf gone? And where had this man come from? Had he been in the forest when the accident happened? But then why was he naked? And how had he ended up in the exact spot where she'd struck the creature? Lightning illuminated the scene again, and Claire made her decision. She couldn't leave him here in the storm, naked and unconscious with hypothermia a growing threat. The veterinary hospital was only 2 miles back down the road, and it had an emergency treatment setup designed for large animal surgeries. It would have to do until she could get him proper medical attention or contact emergency services. Loading his unconscious form into her damaged car took 20 minutes of careful maneuvering. His weight was immense, all dense muscle and bone that suggested physical power far beyond normal human parameters. As she struggled to position him across the back seat, covering him with emergency blankets from her trunk, the man's eyes fluttered open briefly. Gold. Pure, burning gold that seemed to glow with internal light, exactly like the wolf's eyes had been. "You," he whispered, his voice rough with something that might have been recognition, before consciousness fled again. Claire stared down at his peaceful face, rain dripping from her hair onto his chest. "You," like he knew her, like he'd been waiting for her. The drive back to Pine Valley Veterinary Hospital passed in a blur of damaged headlights and grinding metal, but somehow her car limped through the storm. And with every mile, the unconscious man in her back seat seemed to burn hotter with fever that should have been killing him, but somehow wasn't. Questions multiplied in her mind like storm clouds, but one thought rose above all others. Her ordinary life in Pine Valley had just ended forever. Chapter 2. Awakening Fury. Dawn crept through the veterinary hospital's skylights like a guilty secret, casting pale gold rectangles across the sterile treatment room where Claire had spent the night monitoring her mysterious patient. She'd managed to transfer him from her damaged car to the surgical table meant for large animals, hooking him up to monitoring equipment that tracked his vital signs with mechanical precision. Everything about his condition defied medical explanation. His temperature had stabilized at 104 degrees, a fever that should have caused brain damage or death. Yet he showed no signs of distress. His heart rate remained steady at 40 beats per minute, impossibly slow for a human but perfectly regular. Most disturbing of all, the minor cuts and scrapes she'd cleaned from his skin had vanished entirely by morning, leaving unmarked flesh that looked like it had never been injured. Claire had dozed fitfully in the chair beside him, startling awake every time the monitors beeped or his breathing changed rhythm. She'd called the sheriff's department to report the accident, but the storm had knocked out several cell towers and the phones wouldn't connect. Pine Valley felt completely isolated from the outside world, trapped in its mountain valley with secrets she was only beginning to glimpse. Now, watching sunlight play across the stranger's sharp features, she found herself studying him with fascination that went beyond professional medical interest. His dark hair had dried into thick waves that looked incredibly soft to touch. The scar through his left eyebrow gave his face character, suggesting a life that included violence or danger. His body was a study in controlled power, every muscle defined with the precision of someone who used physical strength as naturally as breathing. Who was he? How had he ended up naked on that mountain road during the worst storm in months? And why did looking at him make her feel like she was remembering something important she'd forgotten? A low growl rumbled through the treatment room, and Claire's attention snapped back to her patient. His eyes were open, those impossible golden orbs fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. But this wasn't the grateful confusion of someone waking up in a hospital. This was fury, pure and primal, radiating from him like heat from a furnace. "Where am I?" His voice was deep, roughened by sleep, but carrying an undertone of command that made her want to answer immediately. "Pine Valley Veterinary Hospital," Claire said, keeping her tone professional despite the way his stare made her pulse race. "You were unconscious on Mountain Ridge Road during the storm. I brought you here because it was the closest medical facility." He sat up with fluid grace that should have been impossible after hours of unconsciousness, the monitoring wires pulling free from his chest with small popping sounds. Claire reached forward instinctively to stop him, but froze when his golden eyes locked onto hers with predatory focus. "You hit me with your car." It wasn't a question. His gaze traveled over her face like he was memorizing every detail, cataloging information for purposes she couldn't guess. "I hit a wolf," Claire corrected, confusion making her defensive. "A massive wolf that was standing in the middle of the road. You were found nearby, but I don't understand how you got there or why you were—" She gestured helplessly at his nakedness, now partially covered by the hospital gown she'd managed to get on him while he was unconscious. Something shifted in his expression, a flicker of surprise quickly suppressed. "A wolf. Yes, silver and black, with golden eyes like—" She trailed off, realizing how crazy it sounded. "Like yours." The man swung his legs off the treatment table and stood, towering over her 5'5" frame with intimidating presence. This close, she could see that his skin held a faint shimmer, as if gold dust had been mixed into his genetics. The hospital gown strained across his broad shoulders, clearly designed for smaller patients. "What's your name?" he asked, taking a step closer that brought the scent of pine forests and wild places. "Claire Morgan." She took an involuntary step backward, her body responding to some instinct she didn't understand. "What's yours?" "Knox Hartwell." He moved again, not quite advancing, but positioning himself between her and the door with casual efficiency. "And you should be dead." The words hit her like ice water. "Excuse me?" You struck the wolf with your vehicle at high speed. In my world, that's a death sentence." His golden eyes never left her face, studying her reaction with scientific curiosity. Yet here you are, playing nursemaid instead of running for your life. Claire's heart hammered against her ribs, but she lifted her chin defiantly. Years of handling aggressive animals had taught her that showing fear only made dangerous situations worse. "Are you threatening me, Mr. Hartwell?" "Stating facts." Knox tilted his head, the gesture somehow more animal than human. "You're not afraid of me. You should be terrified. But instead you're standing there like you're ready to fight. That's unusual. Maybe I'm just stupid." But even as she said it, Claire knew it wasn't true. She should be calling for help, running from this strange man who spoke in riddles and looked at her like she was a puzzle to be solved. Instead, she felt drawn to him in ways that made no logical sense. Knox laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "No. Stupid doesn't explain why you're still breathing. Stupid doesn't explain why you can look me in the eye without flinching." He moved closer, and Claire caught more of that wild scent that seemed to emanate from his skin. "What are you?" "Claire Morgan. I'm a veterinarian. I help injured animals, which is what I thought I was doing when I brought you here." She crossed her arms over her chest, partly defiant and partly protective. "What are you, Knox Hartwell?" "Because normal people don't heal from injuries overnight or run around naked in thunderstorms." His smile was sharp and dangerous. "Normal people don't interest me." The air between them crackled with tension that had nothing to do with his cryptic threats and everything to do with the way he looked at her mouth when she spoke. Claire felt heat building in her chest, an attraction so sudden and powerful it took her breath away. This was insane. She didn't know this man, didn't understand half of what he was saying, but her body responded to his presence like he was some missing piece she'd been searching for without knowing it. "I need to go," Knox said suddenly, breaking the spell that had woven around them. "Thank you for the medical attention, but I can't stay here." He moved toward the door, but Claire stepped sideways to block his path. "You can't leave. You were seriously injured. You have no clothes, and I still don't understand what happened on that road." "What happened?" Knox said, his voice dropping to a growl that seemed to vibrate through her bones. "Is that you've gotten involved in something far more dangerous than you can imagine. The smart thing would be to forget you ever saw me. I'm not forgetting anything until someone explains why there was a giant wolf in the middle of the road that disappeared after I hit it, and why you appeared in the exact same spot with the exact same golden eyes." Claire planted her feet stubbornly. "I may be small, but I'm not helpless, and I'm not stupid. Something impossible happened last night. And you know what it was." Knox stared at her for a long moment, something like admiration flickering in his golden gaze. Then he moved faster than should have been humanly possible, closing the distance between them in a single fluid step. His hands framed her face, fingers tangling in her hair, as he backed her against the wall with overwhelming presence. "You want to know what happened?" His voice was barely above a whisper, but it filled the room completely. "You hit the most dangerous predator in these mountains, a creature that could tear you apart before you could scream. And instead of killing you for the insult, I'm standing here wanting to—" He stopped abruptly, his thumb brushing across her lower lip with devastating gentleness. Claire's breathing came in short gasps, her heart racing not with fear, but with an arousal so intense it shocked her. "Wanting to what?" Knox's eyes dropped to her mouth, and for a moment she thought he might kiss her. The air between them thrummed with possibility, with attraction so magnetic it felt like gravity. Then he stepped back abruptly, releasing her from the cage of his arms. "Wanting to protect you from what's coming," he finished roughly. But I can't do that if you keep asking questions that will get you killed. Before Claire could respond, he strode to the door and yanked it open. Stay away from the forest, Claire Morgan. Stay away from me. And if you're smart, you'll leave Pine Valley before the next full moon. He disappeared into the morning light, leaving her alone with racing pulse and more questions than ever. But one thing had become crystal clear. Knox Hartwell was no ordinary man, and whatever had happened on that mountain road had changed both their lives forever. Claire touched her lips where his thumb had traced, her skin still tingling from his touch. She should be calling the police, reporting a possibly unstable patient who'd left against medical advice. Instead, she found herself staring out the window, watching his powerful form disappear into the tree line that bordered the hospital parking lot, running toward the forest rather than away from it, like he belonged there more than anywhere else. The wolf, the man, the golden eyes that haunted her dreams and now invaded her waking world. What had she gotten herself into? Chapter 3. Uneasy Sanctuary. The following days after Knox's abrupt departure from the hospital haunted Claire's every waking moment. His words echoed ominously in her mind, warnings that pressed on her like the weight of the storm that had ignited their collision. Despite Knox's harsh command to stay away from the forest and from him, Claire's instincts urged her toward discovery instead of retreat. She watched Pine Valley with new skepticism, noticing inexplicable details she'd overlooked for years. Tracks larger than any animals among the undergrowth, distant howls that chilled her blood in the quiet night, and unsettling glances from the locals whose eyes seemed to hide more than simple small-town gossip. Claire's life became a careful balance between the everyday and the extraordinary. She fulfilled her duties at the veterinary hospital, tending to injured animals brought in by rangers and locals alike. Yet, under the surface of her routine, she studied Knox's name and the stories whispered about the Moonridge Pack. His reputation as the most dangerous alpha extended beyond mountains. It eclipsed the forests, haunting the edges of conversations and fueling legends. One evening, as dusk melted into night, a pack of injured wolves was brought in after a forest fire had torn through part of the Moonridge territory. Claire's heart hammered, seeing the fear and pain in their eyes. Creatures she had only ever understood from afar now lost and vulnerable under her care. She moved with gentle authority as she cleaned wounds and soothed trembling limbs, every touch a silent plea for trust. Later, Knox appeared on the hospital's doorstep, a shadow framed by the flickering porch light. His presence commanded immediate attention. He was more formidable than the stories had claimed, his posture regal and dangerous, accented by the faint shimmer of his shifting power. "Why are you here?" Claire demanded, her voice a mixture of anger and relief. Knox's golden eyes softened momentarily. "Because you're in danger." With the threat of Victor Gray's machinations escalating, Knox revealed the true reason behind Claire's predicament. The rival pack sought the girl who had unknowingly inherited a powerful legacy. Claire's lineage tied deeply to the Alpha bloodline, a fact Knox had withheld to protect her. Despite feeling betrayed by Knox's secrecy, Claire recognized the sincerity beneath his imposing exterior. She agreed, albeit reluctantly, to his proposal, for her to stay under his protection. Their uneasy alliance forced them into close proximity. Claire moved into Knox's expansive, fortified compound nestled deep within the forest, where pack hierarchy and the laws of shifters reigned unchallenged. The walls were thick stone and ancient timber, echoing the weight of generations past. Claire soon discovered an unexpected strength within herself, an ember of raw courage and longevity's resolve. Despite the foreign world around her, she adapted, learning to navigate pack politics and unspoken rules. Knox, displaying facets of vulnerability rarely seen by outsiders, showed her the burdens of leadership, the constant vigilance, the sacrifices demanded by duty. Between enforced conversations and shared silences, a delicate connection bloomed. Moments where their veils of defense slipped, exposing threads of humanity intertwined with primal instincts. She glimpsed traces of the man beneath the alpha, guarded, but not unreachable. But protection came with costs. Victor's shadow loomed larger, and the fragile peace they built teetered on the edge of a deeper conflict that neither could face alone. Night after night, Claire lay awake in the guest room of the compound, staring at the ceiling thick with carved wooden beams. Her thoughts spiraled with uncertainty and something new, an ache that reached beyond fear or survival, a growing need for belonging. Knox's presence in the next room was a constant reminder of how far this world had invaded her life. She could hear his steady breathing, the occasional sigh of burden carried silently like a mountain on his broad shoulders. Their paths had collided in a storm, but the storm was only the beginning. Early one morning, Claire ventured deeper into the dense woods surrounding the compound, driven by a restless spirit she barely understood. The forest was alive with the scent of moss and damp earth, the whispers of leaves weaving tales ancient as time itself. She moved cautiously, half expecting to see eyes watching from the shadows. Suddenly, the silence shattered as a low growl rolled over the mossy ground. Claire froze, heart pounding, as Knox emerged from the trees, his form shifting fluidly between man and beast, the feared alpha in full magnificent transformation. Fur rippled over rippling muscles, golden eyes burned brighter than the dawn. "You shouldn't be here," Knox growled, approaching cautiously. "The pack's world is more dangerous than you imagine." But Claire held her ground, meeting his gaze with fierce resolve. "I'm not afraid. I need to understand." Her voice trembled but carried strength, and so began their forced lessons, the delicate dance of trust and power between a hunted girl and the mountain's fiercest protector. Knox revealed the ancient laws governing shifters, the sacred bonds of pack hierarchy, and the burdens of leadership that weighed him down. Claire learned that her own bloodline was steeped in this hidden world, her adoptive parents' demise entwined with pack warfare that had long been whispered but never fully told. Days blended into nights, their proximity unavoidable. The air thrummed with tension unspoken yet electric, a magnetic pull neither could deny. Yet beneath the surface, Knox wrestled with protecting Claire without losing control, and Claire struggled to embrace a destiny she had never asked for. One evening, as the moon hung low and heavy, Knox offered a rare smile and spoke softly. "You're stronger than you know, Claire." She believed him then, not just as a declaration, but as a promise. Days at the compound were an education in survival and power. Claire quickly learned that every glance, every word among the pack's members carried weight. The Moonridge pack operated on an unspoken code of respect and strength, where the weak were spared only if deemed useful, and challenges were met with ruthless decisiveness. Despite the harshness, Claire was surprised to find kindness in unexpected places. From Aiden, the second in command, whose quiet strength belied a protective nature, to Lila, the healer whose wisdom shone in gentle smiles and healing hands. They accepted her presence cautiously, but without outright hostility. Knox, for his part, was a constant enigma. His formidable exterior was pierced only briefly during moments of exhaustion, revealing glimpses of the loneliness that crept beneath the mantle of Alpha. Each night he patrolled the forest boundaries alone, speaking softly in a language Claire couldn't understand to the shadows. Their interactions were marked by alternating extremes. Tense silence one moment, explosive confrontations the next. At times Knox's wolf instincts surfaced unexpectedly, his sharp teeth bared in frustration, only to be tempered by moments of surprising tenderness. Claire found herself drawn to those rare glimpses of his true self. They shared stories of loss and hope in whispered conversations around flickering firelight, forging an unsteady bond built on mutual respect rather than trust. She trained relentlessly, learning to endure pain and master instincts that simmered beneath her skin, fueled by an awakening power she barely comprehended. Each night, the moon seemed to call her name with voices only she could hear, stirring an ancient magic deep inside. Knox watched her transformation with a mixture of pride and fear. His protective instincts warred with his desire to see her claim her rightful place within the pack. Their world was fraught with danger. Yet amid the looming threat of Victor Gray's scheming, a fragile hope took root. Together, they stood against the gathering storm, unaware of how fate would soon intertwine their paths forever. One evening, as Claire sat alone on the stone steps outside the compound, the night sky blossomed with stars. The silence was broken by soft footsteps, and Knox appeared beside her. The sharp angles of his face softened in moonlight. "Do you trust me?" he asked quietly. Claire hesitated, memories of his abrupt abandonments warring against the undeniable truth of her growing feelings. I want to. That one phrase bridged the gap between enemy and ally, setting the stage for something neither dared to name but both yearned for. The uneasy alliance had only just begun. Chapter 4. Tides of Desire. The days at the Moonridge compound stretched into weeks, each sunrise bringing Claire deeper into a world that challenged everything she thought she knew about herself. Living among the pack meant navigating an intricate web of relationships built on respect, fear, and ancient hierarchies that predated human civilization by millennia. Nox's presence was a constant force in her daily existence, simultaneously protective and overwhelming. He pushed her through brutal training sessions that left her muscles screaming and her pride wounded, yet she found herself craving his attention, his approval, even his criticism. The way he watched her during combat drills sent heat spiraling through her chest, his golden eyes tracking every movement with predatory intensity. "Again," Nox commanded from the edge of the sparring ring, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Claire wiped sweat from her forehead, her body aching from hours of practice with Aiden, Nox's second-in-command. The beta was patient, but relentless, teaching her to harness instincts she didn't know she possessed. "She's getting stronger," Aiden observed quietly, helping Claire to her feet after she'd successfully executed a particularly complex defensive maneuver. "The alpha bloodline is awakening in her." Nox's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "It needs to awaken faster. Victor won't wait for her to be ready." The mention of Victor Gray sent a chill down Claire's spine. Intelligence reports filtering in from scout patrols painted a picture of increasing aggression from the Shadow Creek pack. Territory disputes that had simmered for years were escalating into something more dangerous, more personal. And at the center of it all was her own mysterious heritage, a legacy she was only beginning to understand. Evenings brought a different kind of tension. After the compound settled into watchful quiet, Claire often found herself drawn to Nox's study, where he pored over maps and correspondence by lamplight. These stolen moments between them crackled with unresolved desire and the weight of unspoken truths. "Tell me about my parents," Claire asked one night, settling into the chair across from his desk. "The real story, not the sanitized version you gave me before." Nox's fingers stilled on the papers before him. "Your father was Alpha of the Crimson Moon Pack, one of the most respected leaders in the region. Your mother was his Luna, known for her healing abilities and diplomatic skills." His voice grew rough with old grief. "Victor killed them both during a supposed peace negotiation. You were the only survivor." The revelation hit Claire like a physical blow. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because knowing wouldn't have kept you safe. Because I hoped you could live a normal human life, away from pack politics and blood feuds." Nox's golden eyes met hers across the flickering candlelight. "Because I was a fool who thought he could protect you from your own destiny." That night, the careful distance they'd maintained finally cracked. Claire rose from her chair and moved around the desk, her hand finding Nox's cheek with trembling fingers. "You're not my protector, Nox. We're partners in this, or we're nothing at all." He caught her wrist, his thumb tracing the pulse point there with reverent touch. "Do you understand what you're saying? What it means to be bound to an alpha?" "I understand that I'm tired of fighting what I feel," Claire whispered, leaning closer until their breath mingled. "I understand that whatever comes next, I want to face it with you." Nox's control snapped. He pulled her onto his lap, his mouth claiming hers with desperate hunger. The kiss was fire and fury, weeks of suppressed longing pouring out in a single explosive moment. Claire's hands fisted in his shirt, anchoring herself against the storm of sensation threatening to sweep her away. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nox rested his forehead against hers. "Claire, if we do this, there's no going back. The mate bond isn't something that can be undone. I don't want to go back," she replied firmly. "I want to go forward with you." Their moment of connection was shattered by urgent pounding on the study door. Aiden burst in without waiting for permission, his face grim with news that made Nox's blood run cold. "Alpha, they took Emma Rodriguez from the hospital. Victor's pack left a message." Claire's heart stopped. "Emma, her closest friend from her old life, had been working the night shift at Pine Valley Veterinary Hospital when Victor's wolves struck. The message was simple and devastating: Claire's compliance in exchange for Emma's life. Knox's fury was terrible to witness, his alpha power radiating through the room like heat from a forge. "Mobilize the pack. Full combat readiness. We leave in 1 hour." "Knox, wait." Claire grabbed his arm as he moved toward the weapons cabinet. "This is exactly what Victor wants. He's using Emma to force my hand." "Then we'll give him what he wants," Knox growled, loading silver ammunition into clips with mechanical precision. A war he can't win. The preparation for battle transformed the compound into a hive of deadly efficiency. Pack members emerged from their quarters armed and ready, their human facades dropping away to reveal the predators beneath. Claire watched in fascination and growing dread as Knox's authority shaped chaos into lethal organization. Lila, the pack's healer, pressed a tactical vest into Claire's hands. "You'll need this. And remember, stay close to the alpha. Your safety is paramount to the pack's survival." "My friend's safety is paramount to mine," Claire replied, checking the fit of the protective gear. "I won't let Emma die because of what I am." The rescue mission launched under cover of darkness. 23 wolves moving through the forest with supernatural grace and coordination. Claire ran alongside Knox in human form, her newly awakened senses allowing her to keep pace with creatures built for speed and endurance. Victor had chosen his battleground carefully, an abandoned logging camp deep in disputed territory, far from human interference, surrounded by dense forests that would muffle sounds of violence. Claire's enhanced hearing picked up Emma's heartbeat from the central building. Steady, but elevated with fear. Knox's hand signal brought the pack to a halt at the tree line. Through the shadows, Claire could see Victor's wolves positioned strategically around the compound, their pale forms ghost-like in the moonlight. At their center stood Victor himself, his platinum hair gleaming as he waited with predatory patience. "He knows we're here," Aiden whispered, his beta senses reading the tactical situation with professional assessment. "This isn't a rescue mission, it's an execution trap." Knox's smile was sharp and feral. "Then we spring it on our terms." The battle erupted with supernatural violence. Knox's pack struck like lightning, their coordinated assault shattering Victor's defensive positions within seconds. Claire threw herself toward the central building where Emma was held, Knox flanking her with protective fury that cleared their path of enemies. Inside the ramshackle structure, Emma was bound but unharmed, her eyes wide with terror and confusion. "Claire? What's happening? These people, they're not human, are they?" "No, they're not," Claire replied grimly, working to free her friend's restraints. "And neither am I, apparently. Can you walk?" Before Emma could respond, Victor appeared in the doorway like a nightmare-given form. His ice-blue eyes fixed on Claire with possessive hunger that made her skin crawl. "The lost princess returns home at last. Your parents would be so proud to see you embracing your true nature." Knox materialized behind Victor with lethal silence, his claws extending as he prepared to end the threat once and for all. But Victor spun with inhuman speed, catching Knox across the chest with silver-tipped claws that drew blood and a roar of pain. "Did you really think it would be that easy?" Victor laughed, his form beginning to shift and blur as his wolf fought for dominance. "I've been planning this moment for 24 years. The confrontation devolved into brutal, close combat. Knox and Victor circling each other like apex predators fighting for territory and survival. Claire pushed Emma toward the rear exit, while keeping one eye on the deadly dance between alphas, her heart in her throat every time Victor's claws came close to finding their mark. But Knox was magnificent in his fury, every movement calculated and devastating. Years of leadership had honed his fighting skills to supernatural perfection, and Victor's arrogance proved his downfall. A feint left, a strike right, and Victor was on the ground with Knox's teeth at his throat. "Yield," Knox growled, his voice barely recognizable through the wolf's dominance. Victor's surrender came with bitter laughter. "You think this ends it? She'll never be safe, Knox. What she carries in her blood is too valuable, too dangerous. Others will come." Knox's response was to apply pressure until Victor lost consciousness, his threat neutralized if not permanently eliminated. The pack's victory was complete, but the warning echoed in Claire's mind as they made their way back to Moon Ridge territory. In the aftermath, as Emma recovered from her ordeal under Lila's care, Claire found herself alone with Knox in the moonlit courtyard. The adrenaline of battle was fading, leaving behind a different kind of intensity. "Tonight changed everything," Knox said softly, his golden eyes reflecting starlight. "You fought beside me as an equal. The pack saw it. Victor saw it. There's no hiding what you are anymore." Claire moved closer, her hand finding his over the bandages covering his chest wounds. "I don't want to hide anymore. I want to claim my place here, with you, with the pack. I want to be Luna." Knox's breath caught at her declaration. "Claire, being Luna means more than just being my mate. It means sharing the burden of leadership, making decisions that will affect every pack member's life. Are you ready for that responsibility?" "I'm ready for whatever comes next," Claire replied, her voice steady with newfound conviction. "As long as we face it together." Under the watchful gaze of the full moon, Knox claimed her mouth in a kiss that sealed their bond and their fate. The mate connection snapped into place with overwhelming intensity, binding their souls in ways that transcended human understanding. When they finally broke apart, both trembling with the force of their connection, Claire knew her old life was truly over. In its place stood something stronger, more dangerous, and infinitely more precious than anything she'd ever imagined possible. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new tests of their unity. But tonight, she was home. Chapter 5. Shadows Unveiled. The days following their triumphant rescue of Emma were shadowed by a fragile calm that hid the storm still brewing beneath the surface. Claire tried to settle into her new identity as Luna of the Moonridge Pack. But each heartbeat carried the weight of secrets waiting to shatter the peace. It was during a quiet morning in the healing wing, surrounded by the scents of herbs and antiseptics, that Claire learned the full truth about her lineage. Lila, the pack's healer, brushed her fingers over an ancient journal bound in worn leather and spoke softly. "Your bloodline is not just powerful, it's cursed." Claire's breath hitched. "Cursed?" Lila nodded. "Generations ago, a bitter betrayal fractured your family's pack, marking your blood with a malediction that brings suffering to those who claim it." Knox entered the room quietly, tension radiating from him like heat. "That curse is why your parents were killed, why Victor wants you so badly." The revelation twisted Claire's grief into a sharper edge, turning fear into determination. Her existence was no accident. It was strategy in a deadly game fought in shadows and blood. The peace that had seemed possible slipped into chaos swiftly. Victor's forces unleashed a series of brutal attacks on Moonridge border settlements, igniting a war that clawed at the very foundations of the pack. Claire's leadership skills were tested as she coordinated medical teams, endured endless nights treating the wounded, and made decisions that bore the heavy weight of life and death. Amid the chaos, betrayal struck from within. A trusted pack member, long believed loyal, was revealed as Victor's spy, feeding information and weakening defenses. The shock of treachery cut deep into Claire's confidence, fracturing the fragile trust she sought to build. The increased attacks culminated in a devastating assault on their home base, driving the pack into a desperate retreat. Lives were lost, bonds strained, and the line between friend and foe blurred in the heat of battle. Separated from Knox during the chaos, Claire was captured by Victor's men, thrust into a dark cell where the true horror of her predicament unfolded. Victor, unshackled by pretenses, revealed his cruel desire to harness the full extent of Claire's cursed legacy for his own gain. Torture and dark rituals aimed to break her spirit and force her submission. But Claire's will burned brighter than any pain. In the depths of captivity, she summoned strength from the memory of her parents, from the bond she shared with Knox, and from the fierce pride of her lineage. Her transformation was forced and painful, but undeniable. Powers surged to the surface, healing flames, unearthly strength, and a connection to the moon that pulsed with raw energy. Meanwhile, Knox rallied the shattered remnants of the Moonridge Pack, pushing past grief to wage a relentless campaign to rescue his Luna. Allies from neighboring territories pledged support, swelling their ranks with fighters united by shared purpose. The confrontation between Alpha and Alpha loomed, their destinies intertwined in a shadow war painted in blood and fire. In the solitude of captivity, Claire's spirit remained unbroken. Each bruise and every whispered insult steeled her resolve to survive, to reclaim her freedom, and to protect the pack that had become her family. Days bled into nights, and Claire measured time by the shifting patterns of cold stone walls and whispered threats. Victor's shadowy cell was a prison not just of walls, but of despair, designed to erase hope and crack the strongest wills. Yet Claire discovered a strange clarity in the darkness. Memories of her parents whispered like ghosts, affirming her strength. The bond with Knox, distant but unyielding, lent her courage. She began to harness her growing powers, calling on the ancient connection to the moon that pulsed within her bloodline. Flames danced at her fingertips in moments of desperation, and her wounds healed at startling speeds, defying Victor's cruel designs. Meanwhile, outside the compound ruins, Knox bore the weight of leadership alone. The loss of Claire fueled a fire in his veins, transforming sorrow into relentless determination. Forging alliances with wary neighboring packs, Knox marshaled a force seasoned in war and tempered by necessity. Each night, the Moonridge Pack's howls echoed through the mountains, a declaration of undying resistance. Betrayals further complicated Knox's struggle. Spies in his midst sowed discord, forcing harsh decisions and painful sacrifices. The game of survival was unrelenting, and the alpha wound tighter each nerve. A plan emerged, a desperate gambit to infiltrate Victor's stronghold, rescue Claire, and end the bloodshed. Knox chose his most trusted fighters, knowing the price could be catastrophic. As preparations unfolded, Claire's captors grew wary of the girl whose resilience defied explanation. She became both a prize and a threat, her power a wild card in the deadly game Victor sought to control. In the quiet moments between pain and vigilance, Claire concocted an escape plan, weaving patience with determination. The culmination of their intertwined fates approached like a storm on the horizon, promising a reckoning that would shake the foundations of the supernatural world. Each step taken by Knox and Claire was weighted toward survival, toward vengeance, toward a future carved from the ruins of betrayal and war. In captivity, Claire's power grew with every passing day. The moon's pull resonated deeper within her marrow, stirring abilities she scarcely understood but was beginning to wield with intent. Flames kindled beneath her skin, a healing fire that could mend wounds but demanded energy that left her exhausted. Strength surged in sudden bursts, raw and uncontrolled, threatening destruction if not carefully restrained. Victor viewed these manifestations with mounting unease hidden behind his cold blue gaze. He increased the frequency and severity of his ritualistic tortures, seeking to bend Claire's will, to control the curse that defined her bloodline. Yet each attempt met with fierce resistance, as if her very soul fought back against domination. During one dark ritual, Victor's voice cut through the chamber, thick with venom. "Submit, and your suffering will end." Claire's laughter was a blade. "You misunderstand. This curse is my strength, not my weakness." Her captors recoiled as flames flickered in her palms, casting twisting shadows against stone walls. Far beyond, Knox prepared for the ultimate confrontation. Every night, he grappled with the weight of choices past and future, knowing the fate of the Moonridge Pack hinged on what came next. His mind played over battle strategies, alliances forged and betrayed, and the woman he loved trapped and growing stronger in enemy hands. The Pack's scouts had located Victor's compound, nestled deep in the Blackwood forest, an ancient place rumored to be steeped in dark magic. Knox dispatched his best fighters with strict orders to move swiftly and silently. Claire's rescue was paramount. Failure was unthinkable. As the raid approached, the tension among Moonridge warriors was palpable. Faces hardened by grief, hope, and vengeance blended into a sea of determination. Inside the prison, Claire's senses sharpened to every footstep, every whispered word between guards. Her mind raced with escape plans layered atop one another, each a strand in a fragile web of freedom. It was during these moments of solitude that visions came. Ghostly images of her parents, of pack warfare, of the curse's origin entwined with sacrifice and blood debt. Claire reached for these visions like lifelines, drawing strength and understanding from ancestral memories. The day of reckoning dawned with a cold sky heavy with foreboding. Knox and his pack surged into the Blackwood forest, spirits roaring with primal intensity. The battle was brutal and swift, wolves and shifters clashing amid twisted trees and ancient stones that seemed to watch the carnage. Knox fought with a fierce clarity fueled by love and loss, deflecting blows meant to break his spirit. The pack rallied behind him, their howls a chorus of defiance that shook the forest floor. As the battle reached its climax, Knox pushed deeper into the compound, drawn by a fierce, intuitive pull to Claire's cell. They found her battered but unbroken, flames of power flickering in exhausted fingers, a beacon in the darkness. His arrival was instantaneous protection, a shield forged from agony and hope. Claire's eyes met his, and in that moment, all fear and doubt dissolved. Together, they rose from the ruins of captivity, ready to face the future, scarred, bound, and unyielding. Chapter 6. Flame of Reckoning. The sharp scent of pine and ash hung thick in the air as Knox led the Moonridge pack away from the smoldering ruins of Victor's stronghold. Claire walked beside him, her body still trembling from the ordeal of captivity, but her spirit blazing fiercer than ever. The battles fought and won had carved scars deep into their souls, yet neither was willing to surrender. Knox's mind raced, torn between the burden of leadership and the fierce need to protect his Luna. His pack was battered but unbroken, its spirit rooted in loyalty and survival. But the war was far from over. Victor's forces, scattered and raging, still loomed on the horizon. Claire's arrival at the compound was met with quiet reverence. Her transformation was undeniable. Beyond the scarred and bruised skin, an aura of raw power radiated from within. She was no longer the frightened girl who had stumbled into the twilight world, but a luminous force imbued with strength and conviction. The healing itself was a battle. Lila and her team worked tirelessly, tending to body and mind alike. Claire's powers accelerated recovery beyond scientific understanding. Wounds knit fast, fueled by moonlit energy coursing through her veins. Yet, even healing demanded sacrifice. Each surge of power drained her, leaving exhaustion that gnawed at resolve. Knox remained at her side, steady as a mountain, reminding her that strength was forged in fire and tempered by rest. As dusk bled into night, Knox and Claire convened with the pack's council, a gathering charged with tension and uncertainty. The winter's bite whispered through the chamber, and the weight of decisions pressed heavily on every soul present. Their plan was audacious, a final assault to break Victor's hold over their lands and ensure lasting peace. But it required unity among fractured alliances, and sacrifices none wished to tally. The moon rose high, casting silver light on determined faces. Wolves shifted silently, muscles rippling beneath fur as they prepared for the coming storm. Claire's gaze met Knox's across the room. No words were needed to convey the gravity of what lay ahead. Night fell, and the pack moved as one, a tide of shadows weaving through forest and stone. The final battle erupted with savage fury. Claws tearing, teeth snapping, cries of rage and pain ripping through the stillness of the night. Claire felt the surge of her powers as moonlight kissed her skin, a formidable force awakening fully within. She shifted with grace and strength, tearing through enemies with a primal ferocity she barely recognized yet fully embraced. Knox was a whirlwind of destruction and strategy, leading pack members with calculated precision and relentless courage. Each enemy felled was a step closer to freedom, every sacrifice a testament to their shared resolve. Amidst the chaos, their eyes found each other time and again, a tether in the madness. Knox fought not just for the pack, but for Claire, for the bond forged in fire and battle. Claire, in turn, unleashed her power not just as a weapon, but as a shield to protect the only family she had ever known. The climax came as Knox confronted Victor in the heart of the battlefield. The fight was brutal, raw power clashing with ruthless ambition. Victor's arrogance was his downfall. Knox's determination and love poured into every strike. Finally, Knox bested Victor, forcing him into submission and breaking the curse that had haunted Claire's bloodline for generations. The pack's victory echoed through the mountains like a call to rise from ashes. Healing began, wounds mended, and bonds strengthened in the aftermath of war. In the quiet that followed, Knox and Claire found themselves alone beneath the stars, the weight of their journey pressing softly but irrevocably between them. Knox traced gentle patterns along Claire's skin. "You have changed everything," he murmured. Claire leaned into his touch, her heart swelling with fierce certainty. "And we have only just begun." The night held promises of new beginnings, the dawn of a future forged together. Alpha and Luna, bound by love, power, and unbreakable will. The days following the victory brought challenges of a different nature. The scars left by battle were not only on flesh, but etched deep into the hearts of every pack member. Rebuilding trust and order within Moonridge required more than strength. It demanded wisdom and patience. Claire threw herself into the role of Luna with fierce dedication. Her newfound powers blossomed, revealing strengths that defied explanation. Healing energy radiated from her touch, calming wounds and soothing spirits alike. Yet with every act of restoration, the strain on her grew heavier. Knox watched her tirelessly, both proud and worried. Her determination was unwavering, but the cost of wielding such power was an invisible burden that neither of them could ignore. Council meetings became arenas of heated debate as the pack navigated the delicate politics of survival and expansion. New alliances were forged with neighboring packs, wary but hopeful, while old grudges simmered beneath the surface. Claire found herself at the heart of these tensions, both a symbol of hope and a lightning rod for dissent. Some questioned her strength, others her loyalty, and few dared to challenge the rising Luna openly. Together, Knox and Claire worked to unite the pack, their connection a beacon amid uncertainty. Private moments were stolen in the quiet sanctuaries of the compound. Whispers of love, plans for the future, the fragile joy of finally belonging. Yet the past was never far behind. Shadows stirred beyond Moonridge territory, and whispers of ancient enemies arriving reached anxious ears. One evening, Claire stood atop the cliffs overlooking the valley, the moon full and pulsing with ancient energy. Her body hummed with power, a fierce fire ignited within. As Knox approached, his hand found hers. "The fight is never truly over," he said, voice low and steady. But Claire only smiled, eyes bright with determination. "No, but whatever comes, we'll face it together." In that moment, beneath the watchful stars, their bond sealed with the strength of unyielding love and newfound destiny. The journey was far from over, but the Moonridge pack stood ready, reborn, united, and indomitable. Weeks later, the full moon rose high once more, signaling the time for ancient rites that would cement Claire's place as Luna and solidify the pack's future. The ceremony was held in the sacred grove, where generations of alphas and lunas had pledged their lives in love. Moonlight bathed the gathered pack in a silver glow, illuminating faces etched with hope, fear, and fierce loyalty. Knox stood tall, regal and unyielding, his gaze never leaving Claire's as she stepped forward. The rituals were harsh and demanding, testing body, mind, and soul. Claire endured each trial, embracing pain and transformation, as primal power surged through her veins. The bond between her and Knox deepened, an unbreakable chain forged through fire and determination. The final act of the ceremony was the binding, an exchange of blood and promise that intertwined their fates eternally. As their hands clasped and their hearts beat in unison, the pack howled in celebration, the sound carrying across the mountains like a promise of enduring strength. In the days that followed, Claire felt the awakening of powers that set her apart and made her a beacon of hope. And a target. Shadows crept ever closer, and the challenges ahead loomed large. But with Knox by her side, she was ready to face whatever darkness threatened her world. Together they stood, Alpha and Luna, partners in every sense, prepared to lead Moonridge into a new era. The peace was fragile but fiercely defended. Training intensified as the pack prepared not just for survival, but for dominance. Claire learned to command not only her growing supernatural gifts, but to hold space for the pack's spirit, guiding with empathy and strength. Knox was relentless in his demands, yet gentle in his support. Their nights became sanctuaries where they both shed the burdens of leadership, finding solace in shared dreams and whispered promises. One night, as the wind howled through the trees outside, Knox held Claire close beneath the canopy of stars. "We're more than mate and Luna," he murmured. "We are the future of this pack." Claire's heart swelled with the weight of possibility and purpose, and together we are unstoppable. The darkness looming beyond Moonridge territory was gathering power, but the bond between Claire and Knox was a force fierce enough to meet it head-on. Their story, once defined by captivity and conflict, now pulsed with the promise of unity and unyielding strength. Chapter 7. Bond of Shadows. The Moonridge pack stood on the edge of a new era, forever changed by the scars of war and the power of love that had forged its leaders. Knox and Claire had emerged not only as survivors, but as symbols of resilience and unity, their bond slicing through the darkness like a blade of light. With Victor Grey defeated and the curse broken, the time had come for claiming, a sacred ritual older than any werewolf tale whispered beneath the moon. The pack gathered under the grand oak in the heart of the forest, where ancient rites had been held for centuries. The air was heavy with anticipation, charged with the energy of every generation that had come before. Knox stepped forward, regal and commanding. His golden eyes searched Claire's, a silent question hanging between them. Claire met his gaze without hesitation. The trials she had endured, the power awakened within her, all culminated in this moment. Acceptance, unity, destiny entwined. The ceremony began with silence, broken only by the rhythmic beating of drums carried by pack members shrouded in shadow and moonlight. Aidan and Lila took their places near the sacred stone altar, guardians of tradition and witnesses to the union. Knox reached for Claire's hand, their fingers entwining as they approached the altar together. The pact they took was not just between two individuals, but a binding of spirits that would echo through their bloodlines for generations. The elder Alpha recited ancient incantations, his voice rich with authority and reverence, weaving words of protection, loyalty, and eternal bond. Blood was exchanged, a drop from each sealing the unbreakable chain. As the ritual reached its crescendo, Claire felt a surge within her, a flood of power and belonging unlike anything before. The mate bond sparked to life, tethering her to Knox in ways deeper than mere flesh. The pack erupted in joyous howls, the celebration both joyous and reverent, marking not only a romantic union but a consolidation of strength and leadership. But even as the festivities illuminated the night, shadows lingered at the edges. Secrets yet buried and threats yet unspoken, whispered warnings carried by the wind. In the days that followed, Knox and Claire embraced their new roles as leaders with unwavering resolve. Governance was a balance of strength and compassion, of enforcing pack laws and nurturing bonds. Old rivalries simmered beneath the surface, requiring careful diplomacy and occasional displays of power to maintain peace. The pack's future hinged on unity, and the couple's combined strength became the fulcrum upon which salvation teetered. Claire's transformation deepened further. The curse's lingering echoes infused her magic with complexity and depth. She mastered the delicate dance of healing and destruction, becoming both shield and sword. Knox remained her steadfast partner, his alpha authority tempered by newfound vulnerability and respect. They shared burdens and victories equally, their respect as potent as their passionate connection. The pack thrived under their guidance. Territories expanded, alliances strengthened, and old wounds found tentative healing. Together, they faced each challenge not as solitary warriors, but as a unified force, channels of power and love intertwined. Under a waning moon, Claire rested beside Knox, their bodies aligned in quiet unity. "We've come far," she whispered. "And we'll go farther still," Knox replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. Their bond was no longer just an idea or promise. It was living, breathing proof that even in the midst of darkness, light endured. The future awaited, unknown and infinite, but together, they would face it all. The responsibilities of leadership deepened as Knox and Claire navigated the complexities of pack life. Every decision rippled through the community, from territory boundaries to resource management to resolving disputes that threatened fragile peace. Claire's keen empathy and growing power made her an effective Luna. She healed both wounds and fractured spirits. Her counsel became sought after, even by skeptics who once doubted her place. Nox balanced the fierceness demanded of an alpha with surprising tenderness. His protection extended beyond physical defense to nurturing the pack's unity and morale. Together, they faced challenges that tested their resolve. Unknown enemies sought to exploit divisions, while old grievances within the pack simmered, threatening to ignite. In response, Nox and Claire strengthened alliances beyond Moonridge's borders. They attended gatherings of regional alpha councils, negotiating truces and fostering cooperation among rival packs. Through strategy and force, diplomacy and determination, the couple worked hand in hand to secure a future where their pack could flourish. Their bond became a beacon, inspiring loyalty and hope among pack members. Magic, too, evolved. Claire discovered that channeling the curse's complex energies allowed her to manipulate natural forces, touching life and death with equal grace. Training sessions intensified, blending combat and mystical disciplines. Nox stood beside her as both partner and pupil, learning to harness subtler aspects of power. Evenings were filled with quiet moments as they shared dreams and plans beneath starry skies, finding strength in intimacy and shared purpose. The pack's compound thrummed with new energy. Where once was fear and uncertainty, now stood resilience and growth. With every challenge, Nox and Claire's partnership deepened. Heart, soul, and strength united. As spring warmed the mountains, the promise of new life stirred. The pair spoke in hushed tones of family and legacy, dreams seeded in fertile ground. Their story was one not only of survival, but of thriving, a testament to the power of love forged in the crucible of conflict. Together, they would lead Moonridge into an era of unprecedented strength and unity. But the road ahead remained fraught with dangers both seen and unseen, and vigilance was their constant companion. One evening, a messenger arrived bearing news that set the pack on edge. A distant shard of the old world, an enemy thought vanquished, was resurfacing with ambitions that threatened everything Nox and Claire had fought for. The couple convened with their closest advisors, urgency coloring their deliberations. The threat was subtle, but dangerous. A force moving through shadows, aiming to destabilize the entire region. Plans were drafted not for war, but for vigilance. Information became their weapon, diplomacy their shield. Claire took particular interest in uncovering the mystical elements underpinning their enemy's resurgence. Her studies led her into ancient texts, forgotten powers, and forbidden rituals. Nox and Claire's bond proved the cornerstone in a strategy that balanced the tangible and the arcane. In whispered conversations beneath moonlit nights, they prepared not only to defend their pack, but to confront the evolving nature of the threats ahead. Their love, tempered in fire and forged through struggle, remained their greatest strength. As seasons shifted, the story of Moonridge's Alpha and Luna became legend among packs, a tale whispered in awe and respect. And though the horizon held unknown perils, Nox and Claire faced the future unyielding, partners in love, battle, and destiny. The closing nights of spring were serene, but charged with anticipation. Claire found herself atop the sacred hill, the wind tangling her hair as she gazed toward the distant horizon. The land stretched wide and wild, full of promise and peril. Nox joined her silently, his hand seeking hers. "No matter what comes," he vowed, "we stand as one." Their silhouettes blended into the twilight, a symbol of unity that would guide the Moonridge pack through whatever darkness loomed. The story was far from over. Each new dawn brought challenges, victories, and the unspoken bond that made them invincible. Together, Alpha and Luna would lead their pack forward, bound by blood, love, and an unbreakable destiny. The legacy of Nox and Claire would ripple through generations yet unborn, their names etched in the annals of pack history. Stories of their courage, passion, and unyielding spirit would inspire pack members to honor the old ways while forging new paths. Under their guidance, Moonridge flourished, a pack renewed in strength, wisdom, and the power of unbreakable bonds. As seasons turned, the couple's love became a legend sung in howls and whispered prayers beneath the silver moonlight. And though shadows would always test them, the flame of their bond burned eternal, an undying beacon in the ever-shifting night. Chapter 8. New Dawn Rising. Months had passed since the decisive battle that reshaped the fate of the Moonridge Pack and its leaders. The scarred mountains stood silent witness to the transformation of land, of people, and of souls bound by destiny. Claire and Nox thrived in their roles as Luna and Alpha, their relationship deepening into a powerful partnership. Their connection was more than love. It was the foundation of a pack reborn from ashes and hardship. The compound evolved from a fortress into a thriving sanctuary. The veterinary hospital expanded its mission, healing both supernatural wounds and humanity's fragile hearts. Shifters and humans found common ground in shared spaces filled with light and laughter. Claire's powers matured under the guidance of ancient teachings and the unwavering support of Nox. She learned to balance her fierce lunar magic with tender compassion, becoming a beacon of hope and strength. Nox's leadership flourished, blending his fierce alpha nature with newfound wisdom. The pack respected him not only as a warrior, but as a visionary who could see beyond battles to the promise of lasting peace. Children played where once only silence reigned, little wolves in training, their laughter weaving a new song for the Moonridge Mountains. Their legacy was no longer bound to their personal trials, but intertwined with the future of every pack member and the supernatural world at large. But peace was a fleeting gift in a world shadowed by ancient powers. Beyond Moonridge's borders, dark forces stirred. Forgotten enemies whispered in the wind, watching and waiting. The supernatural community was vast, filled with souls struggling through their own darkness, searching for acceptance, fighting unseen battles. Claire and Nox's story was a beacon, a symbol of resilience, transformation, and the unbreakable power of love. For every tale told, countless others waited in silence, longing to be heard. To those who have followed their journey, know this is just the beginning. Being part of this supernatural family means embracing those still lost in the shadows, lending light to their darkest hours. We invite you to join our growing community. Share your thoughts, your stories, and your strength. Together, we become an unyielding force against the night. For those eager to explore more passionate tales woven with magic, heartache, and enduring bonds, we offer an entire collection awaiting your discovery. Subscribe and ring the bell to never miss a journey into worlds where love defies odds and destiny calls. Until our paths cross again in the next tale, thank you for walking this path with us tonight. The air was crisp with the promise of spring as Moonridge celebrated renewal. A time to honor the past and embrace the future. Under the soft glow of twilight, pack members gathered in communal harmony, sharing stories and song, laughter echoing through the ancient woods. Claire stood at the center, radiant in her Luna's mantle, her hands glowing with the gentle light of healing magic. Nox stood tall beside her, a pillar of strength and hope for every soul looking to them for guidance. Their story was deeply woven into the very fabric of the pack's lore, a tale of love forged amid chaos and darkness, victory born of sacrifice and unity. Yet, as the stars shimmered above, Claire and Nox knew their journey was not the end but a chapter in an ongoing saga. The world beyond their valley was vast, filled with hidden dangers and radiant opportunities alike. They pledged to protect their pack and nurture the spark of light kindled in every heart, a fire that could illuminate even the deepest shadows. To those who have walked with them, who have felt their story touch the soul, the path stretches onward, calling to hearts hungry for stories of courage, passion, and supernatural wonders. Together the community stands as a beacon, a family bound by love and fierce loyalty. Join us, stay connected, and help light the way for those still searching for their own dawn. 6 months later, under the golden light of autumn, Claire discovered the greatest gift their bond could offer. The news came with the morning sun, whispered in Nox's ear with tender joy and nervous anticipation. New life stirred within her. Twins, Lila confirmed, their heartbeats strong and steady like the mountain winds. Nox's reaction was pure wonder, his golden eyes bright with unshed tears of happiness. The pack celebrated with renewed vigor, their Alpha and Luna's legacy secured not just in leadership, but in the promise of the next generation. The children would be born into a world of safety and love, surrounded by a family forged through trials and tempered by triumph. They would know their parents' story, the courage it took to claim their destiny, the power of love to overcome even the darkest curses. As winter approached, Claire and Knox stood together on the sacred hill where they'd first truly seen each other's hearts. The valley spread below them, peaceful and thriving, a testament to everything they'd built together. "Our story," Claire murmured, her hand resting on her growing belly. "It's just the beginning." Knox's arm tightened around her, his voice warm with promise. "The best chapters are yet to come." The Moonridge Pack's story is just one among many in a world full of hidden alphas and rising lunas. Across the shadows, others seek their mates and awaken powers that will change their fate. If this journey touched you, know countless more await. Tales of love, strength, and destiny, ready to be discovered. Join our pack by subscribing and hitting the notification bell. Don't miss the chance to explore new adventures and support the stories still waiting to be told. Thank you for sharing this path with Claire and Knox tonight.